Hello and welcome to another Stellarian Games video. In this episode, we're going to be taking a look at the second part of the construction of the Wizard's Tower Golem and the construction of the towers themselves. So let's just jump right in and see how they're built. We're going to start with the top of the Golem's head. The Golem's head is really a result of a watchtower turned into a Golem's head. So we're going to turn this into a watchtower, cutting out the brick sections and then adding some brick texture using the knife and ballpoint pen texturing method. The inside portion of the Golem's head has a hatch down into the tower itself. This is where I imagine the wizard has placed some sort of magical item that is directing the golem or powering the golem in some magical way. I'm using a chain to add some extra texture and then a sculpting tool to kind of press in various different stones to give it some nice texture. I'm cutting out some small holes, peeling them out, and this will be for some small magnets. Those will be attached to some metal screw heads in the golem itself, and will keep the top of the head attached to the tower and allow me to change out batteries as needed. I'm adding some small, tiny detail work along the rim of the Golem's head. This will again help with holding the Golem's head in place. Adding a small bit of cardboard around the base, like a metal bracket kind of holding the head together. Just hot gluing those strips on. Now we're starting to do the actual rough cut of the tower sections itself. I used that cup of flocking to kind of approximate what my tower size was going to be, and then cut out the actual tower out of XPS. Again, did the same method, inserting the hot wire again to cut out the interior of the tower. Next, I'm going to cut out the upright tower with a vertical section of foam. And then at an angle, I have some hand weights underneath the jig, so it made it into conical shapes that would be used for the roofs. I'm cutting out the doors and windows of the lower section of the wizard's hut. The upper section would just be solid foam, won't have an interior. So for the cone sections that were remaining after the cut, I am using those to create dormers on the roof section. They had the same conical shape, so I was able to just slice in sections and use those as dormers. Now I'm doing the knife and ballpoint pen texture to texture all of the exterior stone. Gluing those tower sections together. The upright one doesn't really have an interior, so I was able to just glue all of that together and kind of get that in place. Once I was happy with the positioning of that, then just add a little hot glue and attach it to the stone golem shoulder. Before I put the other tower on top, I decided to texture the floor and give that a quick paint coat as well, so that I wouldn't have to deal with that later. Again, using that same interior curve, I was able to cut out some stairs that would match the interior, and giving us some arches for some nice shape. And I'm also cutting out a fireplace with the same curved pieces so that it'll align to the walls very nicely. Next, we're cutting out very small, thin window frames and using some of the granny grating to create the windows. I'm using those little framing sections to put onto the granny grating on both sides and then gluing that in place into those open windows. That way it'll actually have open feeling windows on the tower. On the other ones that don't have hollow windows, I'm pre-painting those black so that the grating has the black already behind it. And then again, coating that texture on the floor black. And I'm going to paint those interiors before I assemble. So giving this some gray coating for the stones, and then kind of a light tan color for the interior of the wizard's hut. And then using some hot glue and gluing that into place. Finishing off that last dormer section, that's kind of the component that ties to the upper wizard's tower, and then that's attached with the magnets. Now I'm cutting out some small strips of styrofoam, and these will end up becoming just little square shafts, and using a comb and a steel brush to try to texture these as wood planks that I can use to add to the bottom of the roof sections of the tower. Next up, I'm marking a 1/4 inch along a whole section of XPS foam, and then with the hot wire cutter going in and kind of randomly cutting in at various different sizes to make the shingle pattern that I'm going to use for all of the shingles for the roofs. Using the hot wire cutter to give it some texture, and then a steel brush to texture the edge, and then slice off one very thin slice for the shingles. Then I'll texture with a steel brush again, and then slice off another one, etc. This, I wasn't able to work in strips because of the curved shape, but I was able to cut off individual shingles and glue them onto the roof. I realized it would be easier to just glue right onto the roof and add the shingles, so that's what I ended up doing for the rest of the roof, and overlapping shingles all the way up. Next, we're going to start working on kind of the patio section of the building, just trying to get a rough shape of where I wanted that patio to fit in and cut it out so that it would fit the right rock texture. Added a second layer to that patio, just making sure everything would fit where I wanted it to. And then adding some rock texture with the knife and ballpoint pen method again. Glued those into place. Some hot glue. And then worked on cutting in some arch supports for those patio sections so they weren't just kind of floating out in the middle of thin air. Next, I'm using some lava stone to texture all of those exposed boulders that were on the legs and on the chest, etc. It gave it a much nicer texture to all of that stone. I'm using a smaller wire now, doing the same drill and wire method to give a very fine twisted wire. This I'm going to use for the handrails along the edge of that patio. Using some of those planks that we had made earlier, and then shaping that twisted wire into the guardrail sizes. Just hot gluing those into place, and then gluing on some beads on top of them so that it would kind of hold it all in place in one fell swoop. Now I'm using just some shiny paper and cutting those into a circle and forming them into cones for the top of the roof sections. Adding in some more boulders to the ground to give it kind of that tied-in theme of boulders forming the golem. So here's the construction complete of all of the different components that we walked through, and the next video will be covering the painting. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and the like button down below. And while you're at it, you can check out some of the other videos that I have on the Stellarian Games channel. Thank you, and hope to see you again next time.